What if one of the strangest, impossible structures in America wasn't built by a team at all, but by a single, unknown man who understood a rule of nature you've never been taught? Imagine this. You step into a garden of stone in South Florida. Not rough boulders, not crumbling ruins, but clean walls, thrones, tables, arches, even a telescope-like monument, all carved from coral rock. Some pieces weigh several tons. One is said to be around 30 tons. And for years, this place had a final insult to common sense. A gate so perfectly balanced that a child could push it open with one finger. This is Coral Castle. And the question that won't go away is simple. How did one man do it? You're told the builder was a Latvian immigrant named Edward Leedskalnin. He was small, sickly by many accounts. He worked at night. He didn't use a crew. He didn't leave detailed plans. He didn't allow people to watch. And yet, he somehow transformed more than 1,000 tons of coral limestone into an engineered maze of precision-cut blocks. The first fact that makes the story stick is the material itself. Coral rock isn't like granite, but it's not soft sand either. It's ancient reef limestone, heavy, awkward, full of pores. It can fracture if you stress it wrong. You don't casually cut it into neat shapes and stand it upright like Lego. Then there's the timeline. Leedskalnin began building in the 1920s, and he kept going for decades. The site wasn't in a wealthy city center with industrial cranes parked outside. It was, at first, in Florida City, then later moved to Homestead. In the era of hand tools and early machinery, moving multi-ton stones alone isn't just hard. It's the kind of hard that turns into a legend. And the legend is fed by the details he left behind. Leedskalnin wrote small pamphlets. One was called Magnetic Current. Another was a book in every home. They're not engineering manuals. They're strange, personal writings about magnetism, electricity, and what he thought mainstream science was getting wrong. He talked about invisible forces. He hinted that he'd discovered something. If you're the kind of person who likes mysteries, your brain immediately does the math. Secret knowledge plus giant stones plus nighttime labor equals something that sounds like a lost technology. And then come the witness stories. Neighbors claimed they saw him moving stones with what looked like a tripod. Some said he sang to the rocks. Some said he made them float. It's hard to separate memory from myth, but the testimonies have a common theme. Nobody actually saw the key moment. They only saw the aftermath, a new wall section, a new tower, a new block placed where it shouldn't be. And that's the perfect environment for an idea to grow. Because if you don't see the method, you start imagining the method. You start thinking about the Egyptians, about Stonehenge, about the Baalbek stones in Lebanon, some weighing hundreds of tons. You start noticing a pattern in human history, massive stonework, minimal documentation, and an uncomfortable gap between how it looks and how it was done. You also start noticing something else. Coral Castle isn't random. It's aligned with the sky in ways that feel intentional. There's a structure often described as a telescope that points toward the North Star. There are calendar-like features. There are claims, some disputed, some plausible, that he paid attention to solstices and celestial positioning. Now the mystery spreads. Because if Leedskalnin wasn't just stacking stones, but building a kind of instrument, then the project starts looking less like masonry and more like obsession, or research, or a message encoded in architecture. And then there's that gate. For years, visitors could supposedly push it open with a fingertip. The gate was made of a multi-ton slab mounted upright. It swung smoothly like it was on air. Later, it stopped working. When workers finally removed it, they found a metal shaft through the stone and what some reports describe as a truck bearing at the bottom. The gate wasn't magic, but it was still astonishing precision. Drilling a straight hole through stone, balancing weight, reducing friction, these are real engineering problems. Leedskalnin solved them so well that people assumed the solution couldn't be normal. And if he solved that, what else did he solve? Maybe he understood leverage so well it looked like levitation. Maybe he built pulleys and counterweights so elegant they became invisible. Maybe he found a way to reduce friction using rollers, bearings, and balance points. Or maybe this is where the hypothesis gets dangerous. Maybe he found a shortcut through physics itself. Because the modern world has a habit of treating certain things as settled. Gravity pulls, mass resists. Work requires energy. A ton is a ton, but your entire relationship with reality is mediated by what you've been told is possible. If someone appears to break that, even once, your mind opens a hidden door. What if we're missing something? You can feel the temptation. Especially when you learn that Leedskalnin reportedly said he knew the secrets of the pyramids. Not in a detailed way, not in a way you can test, but in a way that sounds like a dare. Like a whisper. You think you know how the world works, but you don't. So you investigate. You look for the tripods. Photos exist of a wooden tripod with a block and tackle setup at the site. You read accounts that he used simple tools. Chains, hoists, wedges. You remember the brutal truth that with enough patience, mechanical advantage can turn the impossible into the slow. You also find that the castle isn't one single monolith. It's many stones, shaped and assembled. That matters, because moving one 30-ton block is a different problem than moving 10 3-ton blocks. The legend compresses the work into a single jaw-dropping image. Reality may have been more methodical. But then you hit another wall. In 1936, Leedskalnin moved the entire project from Florida City to Homestead, about 10 miles away. He supposedly loaded the stones onto a truck. How? Some stories say the truck driver arrived to find the stones already loaded, and Leedskalnin wouldn't let anyone watch. Again, the moment of truth disappears into darkness. You're left with the same pattern, a closed door and a miracle on the other side. At this point, you go looking for what serious people have said. And you find them. Coral Castle has been studied by engineers and skeptics, not because it proves anti-gravity, but because it's an excellent case study in how far simple machines can go. Leedskalnin's own pamphlets are real, and they show a mind fascinated by magnetism, even if his ideas don't match modern physics. The gate's engineering has been examined and repaired. The site has been documented by historians. It's listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. And in the wider world of mystery stonework, archaeologists have spent decades testing the claim that ancient monuments required lost technology. Experiments have shown that large stones can be moved with sledges, ropes, rollers, levers, counterweights, and coordinated labor. Not easily, not quickly, but possible. That doesn't solve Coral Castle, it reframes it. Because Leedskalnin didn't have coordinated labor, he had time and secrecy. Here's the uncomfortable possibility most experts settle on. He did it the boring way. He used tripods and block and tackle hoists, which can multiply force dramatically. He used levers, the oldest cheat code in engineering. He used wedges to lift stones in tiny increments. He used careful balance to let weight work for him, not against him. And he worked at night not because he was hiding anti-gravity, but because Florida is brutally hot, because solitude helps you focus, and because if no one watches, no one interrupts. The secrets of the pyramids, in this reading, aren't mystical. They're practical. They're about patience, geometry, and mechanical advantage. And that finger push gate, that was bearings and balance, not magic. When it stopped working, the reason wasn't that the spell broke. It was that the alignment shifted, the bearing wore down, and the real world reasserted its friction. So does that mean the mystery is over? Not quite. Because the mainstream explanation has its own cracks. Yes, simple machines can lift huge weights, but they still require setup, stability, anchor points, and space. They leave traces. They demand repeated effort. And Coral Castle's stones are not only moved, they are shaped and placed with a kind of neatness that suggests careful planning. Leedskalnin's health was reportedly poor. He had limited money. The site's construction details are still not fully documented. And while it's easy to say tripod and pulleys, it's harder to map every single placement to a clear, verified method with one person working alone. There's also the psychological dimension. Leedskalnin was not just building a structure, he was building a world. Many accounts connect the castle to a heartbreak in his youth, an engagement that ended. Whether that's romantic myth or real motivation, the result is the same. A man pouring decades into stone, shaping grief into architecture. And that's where the mystery shifts. Maybe the real secret isn't hidden physics. Maybe it's human endurance. The ability to obsess, to repeat a task 10,000 times, to refuse help, to accept slow progress as a lifestyle, to master constraints so completely that outsiders mistake discipline for magic. But even that doesn't fully satisfy you, because you still want to know what happened in the moments nobody saw. The instant a stone left the ground. The instant it rotated into place. The instant it balanced perfectly. You want the missing footage, the missing diagram, the missing confession. And you don't get it. You're left with two overlapping truths. One is that physics is brutally consistent. Levers work, pulleys work, balance works. You don't need to rewrite the universe to move stone. The other is that a single human, working alone, can still produce outcomes that feel impossible to everyone else, simply by committing to a timescale most people would never tolerate. Coral Castle sits in that gray zone where myth and method feed each other, where secrecy becomes a tool as powerful as any machine, where the absence of an explanation doesn't prove the supernatural, but it does expose something else. How quickly your certainty collapses when you watch reality do something you can't personally replicate. So when you walk through those coral walls, you're not just looking at stones. You're looking at a question made solid. Not did he use anti-gravity, but how much of the world's impossible is just unobserved work. And if one quiet man could turn years into monuments, right under the nose of an entire town, it raises a final, unsettling thought. Maybe the greatest secrets aren't hidden in forbidden science at all. Maybe they're hidden in plain sight, inside the patience it takes to move one heavy thing 1 inch at a time, until it looks like it was never heavy to begin with.